What's clear is that businesses have slightly different needs to public contact tracing apps. Very much a business usually wants to try and get ahead of a positive COVID result, whereas the public contact tracing apps often only supply information to other parties when there's a positive test result, which actually can take a long time from the start of symptoms until the test result is received. And a business with lots of people in a factory, serving customers at any location, each individual worker wants to have some assurance that, hey, I'm going to go to work and stay safe if one of my other workmates is sick. So there needs to be a process in place to actually figure out which people in a business need to be isolated and at what times.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense. Look, so now we understand a bit more about that and sort of how and why this is really relevant to business. I guess a lot of, businesses will be preparing their PPE, their personal protective equipment. I'm sure they'll have perhaps switch shifts and good cleaning and hygiene processes in place, but contact tracing will be something new, I imagine, to many. So could you give us a bit of a practical overview of how that actually is going to work in an organizational setting?
Sure. So in the very beginning of this COVID outbreak, businesses were trying to do it on paper, spreadsheets, and it really gets quite unwieldy very quickly. So there's really two types of contact tracing that a business can do, and they do combine together to help the business isolate the right people if someone reports sick and make sure other staff members are safe. So firstly, a business can manually contact trace. And from the position we're in, it's very simple to get out the app, quickly push the red button and record who you've met with. Obviously, the product would record in real time. Most automatic manual contact tracing products would record the location and the time of that meeting. And then secondly, there's automatic contact tracing. And that may well be based off geolocation, or it may well be based off a Bluetooth handshake type technology.
That's great. And that Bluetooth handshake, I'm sure, is something that people have heard a bit about through projects in Singapore and places like Israel and the United States and elsewhere. But some of those apps that are being developed are very much based on whole communities, and you touched on this before, but they don't really capture that need for businesses, do they?
Not always, no. And there's a couple of reasons for that. The requirements of a public-facing contact tracing product are very different to a business. Firstly, there's much more privacy emphasis for a public-facing product, with good reason, because you have the vast bulk of the population using it. You have to be very careful indeed with who that data is released to. Secondly, you don't necessarily have saturation. So you may well release a product and only get to 60 or 70% saturation across your population in a best case. And that actually gives, the virus a chance to spread amongst those that don't have contact tracing. So that's there. I mean, I wouldn't be all negative about public-facing contact tracing. I think some of this technology is excellent. I really think a lot of the techniques that have been developed, for example, with Apple and Google's recent collaboration, that's going to change things a little bit for what's available via apps. That's going to have an impact for businesses as well, we would hope. But yes, there are some limitations to Bluetooth contact tracing, and I hope that explains a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. It does sound like that's going to capture a lot of needs and certainly play a really important role as we move forward. But I guess there are things in addition that businesses can look to do to ensure that they can provide those internal processes and provide those assurances to their suppliers, to their partners, to their customers that, hey, look, we're managing this process really thoroughly ourselves and making sure they're taking care of their staff and such. So SaferMe is offering a solution in this space. Can you talk us through a little bit about how that works and the type of clients and stuff and where you're seeing interest in that at the moment?
Yes, I mean, it started very early on during the epidemic where clients were actually adopting our existing product. So this was over a month ago now. And because we had such a background in proximity-based safety, we already have put a lot of effort into the privacy constraints and how to share data between organizations and the users that are being tracked. And there is some effort you have to go to there with GDPR and so forth and other standards. However, when you're using SaferMe, there's really three things that come through from every business. One is some sort of manual contact tracing, some sort of automatic process for those with the app, especially internal people. So a manual process would be usually with contractors, those that may well come into the business or out of the business and don't have the app. Internal automatic contact tracing would be two workers that have the app that are near each other for a certain time, and it would log a likely contact. And that helps administrators just see, okay, this such and a person is reported sick, who have they been in contact, and how do we protect other staff? So it just makes that process really quick. And the third thing that's coming through is daily check-ins. Different countries have different wording around what that means, but essentially it's simple as a worker very quickly acknowledging, hey, I'm feeling fine today, or I'm feeling sick. And then the business's process can swing into action after that. So the worker can be advised to stay home and away from the shift, and perhaps their business may well have a process for how they deal with other close contacts to that person that's displaying symptoms. Now remember, the difference between business and private is it can be good for a business to get ahead of the game. So when symptoms are reported before the positive test comes in, to actually take action and make other workers feel protected, and actually to provide some real protection.
Absolutely. Now, I just want to dive into one of those things you touched on, and we talked about it earlier with the community-based apps, and that's the issue of privacy. I'm sure there are many employers and their employees as well who are concerned about, the thought of using this GPS tracking to know their locations. But let's clarify just how exactly that works. My understanding is that there is no ability for the employer to view the employees and their movements. It's more a case of that data being held with SaferMe as an intermediary on secured servers, and actually keeping that and only revealing the contact traces and the contact table, I think you call it, for the employer in the case where they do actually need to contact trace and contact those people.
Yeah, that's right. There's a real role to be a trusted intermediary. So in other words, a user knows that SaferMe knows where they are, and that we don't pass that information on in real time. What is passed on, though, is the location of contacts. So the date, time and place, and obviously who the contact was with. Now that data is accessed if symptoms are reported. And that's where I guess the business can actually play a role in helping to protect you as a worker. And there always has been that relationship between workers and a business, and the fiduciary care that you have to show from a business perspective to your own workers. And that's actually a little bit different to the relationship between nation state and members of the public. And that's one of the reasons there's a real difference between what a business can do with contact tracing and what the public facing contact tracing app is there for.